Chapter 5. Meanwhile, Psyche wandered through the land, by day and night seeking traces of Cupid, her longing growing each day more ardent, hoping even if she could not win back her angered husband by the fascination of a wife, she might be able to do so by the prayers of a slave. One day in the distance, she saw a temple, capping a rough mountain's summit. Perhaps, she said, my lord dwells there. She quickened her steps towards her goal, hope and desire conquering her weariness. Resolutely she climbed the hard and lofty crags and reached the entrance of the sanctuary. There she saw some ears of corn, some in sheaves and some plaited into crowns. There also she saw some ears of barley. Sickles were there and all the implements of a harvester's needs, but all in disorder, as if thrown down by wearied laborers. Psyche tidied all these things and put each in its place, feeling she ought not to neglect service to any divine sanctuary, but to court the favor of every sympathetic god. While she was doing this with zeal and care, kindly Ceres caught sight of her and exclaimed, "Alas, poor Psyche! Venus, beside herself with anger, makes unremitting search for you. She seeks the direst penalty for you and calls all her strength together to obtain revenge. Are you here taking care of my belongings and thinking of all else but your safety?" Then Psyche fell upon her knees and with her abundant tears bathed the feet of the goddess, while with hair sweeping the ground and with many a fervent prayer she implored her help. "By your hand, which gives forth fruits to the earth, by the pleasant rites of the harvesters, by the mysteries of the secret chest, by the chariot winged by dragons who serve you, by the furrows of Sicilian soil, by the car that carried off Proserpine, by the earth who imprisoned her so fast, by her dark subterranean nuptials, by the light that guided you on your return after you had found your daughter, by all those things that the sacred silence of Attic Eleusis conceals. I beseech you, take pity on poor Psyche, who kneels to you. Let me hide among the sheaves, if only for a few days. Perhaps by that time the wrath of the goddess will have passed away, or at least by an interval of rest. May my way-worn limbs will have gathered fresh strength." "Your prayers and sorrows," replied Ceres, "go to my heart, and I would that I could help you, but Venus is my kinswoman, and to her I am bound by all the ties of friendship. Moreover, she is an excellent woman, and I do not wish to expose myself to her ill will. Leave, therefore, the precincts of my temple without delay, and think yourself lucky that I have not kept you prisoner." Psyche, repulsed in spite of her hopes, was now doubly sad. She retraced her steps and saw in the bottom of a valley a shrine of skillful architecture. Wishing not to neglect the chance of a kinder reception, however doubtful that chance might be, but to implore the assistance of every divinity, she therefore drew near the sacred portals. There she saw the most precious offerings, robes embroidered with golden letters hung on the branches of trees and fixed to the doorposts of the temple, which attested the favors that had been received and the goddess to whom they were consecrated. Then, on bended knee and with hands clasping the still warm altar, stifling her sobs, she breathed forth her prayer. "Great wife and sister of Jove, whether you dwell in the ancient temple of Samos, which rejoices in having heard your earliest cries, and having been your nursery and playground, or whether you dwell in the happy seats of lofty Carthage, where men adore you as a maiden, carried up to heaven in a lion-drawn car, or whether on the banks of Inces, where you are proclaimed the wife of Jupiter and queen of goddesses, you protect the far-famed walls of Argos, you whom all the Orient worships as Ea, and all the Occident as Lucina. in my deep affliction, be to me Juno, the protectress. Pity me, outwearied by my long-drawn suffering, and save me from the danger that hangs over me, even as I know you are wont, in their time of peril, to help all women laboring with child. At these prayers, Juno presented herself in all the pomp and heavenly dignity and answered, By all I hold sacred, I wish I could answer your prayers, but it would be against the wish of Venus, my daughter-in-law, whom I have always loved as my daughter, and this propriety forbids me to do. The laws also forbid me to harbor a slave who has fled from her mistress. Psyche was now in despair at the utter shipwreck of her fortunes. Unable to find traces of her winged husband, and robbed of all the hope and safety, she broods over her sad destiny. Whose help can I seek in my tribulation? Whose help can I obtain when even the goddesses, in spite of their good wishes, dare not come to my aid? Surrounded as I am with so many snares, how can I retrace my steps? Under what roof, within what shades can I hide myself from the all-seeing eyes of great Venus? Why not arm yourself with dauntless courage, bravely cast aside all fruitless hope, and throw yourself of your own accord before the feet of your mistress? Perhaps your submission, although tardy, will soften her cruel wrath. Who knows but that you might find in his mother's palace him for whom you have sought so long, prepared by surrendering for the doubtful chance of safety, or for the completion of her ruin. She thinks out the form of her supplication. Venus, deciding to lay aside earthly means to succeed in her quest, seeks the heavens. She orders her chariot to be made ready, the one that Vulcan, the wonderful goldsmith, had wrought with his subtle art, and which he had offered her as a bridal gift before the consummation of her nuptials. This chariot, made more beautiful by the fretwork of the file, had gained in value by its loss of gold. From the army of white doves, who lodged near the chamber of their mistress, 4 flew out, and with joyous haste, bending their tinted necks, they fasten themselves to the gem-covered yoke. Their mistress takes her place, and gaily they rise on wing. With boisterous twittering, the wanton sparrows swirl round the chariot of the goddess, while the other birds with their sweetest song herald the advent of the queen. The clouds part asunder, and heaven opens his gate to his daughter. And with joy the vast empyrean receives the goddess, nor do the choiring attendants of Venus fear either the fierce eagle or the ravenous hawk. She turns her steps towards Jupiter's royal seat, and demands the use of the services of Mercury with a sonorous voice. Jupiter bows his azure brow in consent. Then the exulting Venus descends from heaven, accompanied by Mercury, and coaxes him with these words. Arcadian brother, you know that Venus has never done anything without the help of Mercury, nor is it unknown to you how long I have made fruitless search for the slave who has escaped me. Nothing remains but that you as crier should publicly make the offer of a reward to anyone who shall recover her. Obey my commands with speed. Make clear the signs and tokens by which she can be recognized, so that if hereafter anyone is accused of the crime of unlawfully harboring her, ignorance cannot be pleaded as an excuse. With these words, she handed him a paper on which inscribed Psyche's name and other details, and as soon as she had done this, she goes home. Mercury did not fail to obey. He went through all the countries of the world and made known the following proclamation and reward. If anyone shall take in flight or discover the hiding place of a fugitive slave of Venus, Psyche by name, the daughter of a king, he shall hand her over to Mercury, the herald, behind the Mercian boundaries. He who does this shall receive as reward 7 sweet, fierce kisses from Venus herself, and 1 sweet with the honey drawn from her caressing tongue. This proclamation by Mercury aroused in everyone a wild desire for the reward, and quite removed any irresolution which Psyche might hitherto have felt. As soon as she approached the portals of her mistress, she met one of the attendants of Venus, called Habit, who, as soon as she saw Psyche, cried at the top of her voice, "At last, basest of slaves, have you learnt that you have a mistress? Or, with an audacity that would fit well with the rest of your character, will you pretend that you did not know what trouble we have been put to in our search for you? But luckily you have fallen into my hands, and you are caught fast in the claws of Orcus, and without delay shall receive the punishment fit for your rebellion." With these words she savagely seized the unresisting Psyche by the hair and dragged her along. When she had been brought before Venus, the goddess broke into triumphant laughter, but it was the laughter of one fierce with wrath. Then, shaking her head and scratching her right ear, she says, "At length you have deigned to visit your mother-in-law. Or is it not rather that you have come to visit your husband, who lies sore wounded by you? But be at ease. I will show you how a good daughter-in-law should be trained." Then she called out, "Where are my 2 slaves, Sorrow and Care?" When they were called in, she handed Psyche over to them for torture. They followed out the orders of their mistress, and having scourged poor Psyche and put her under all forms of torture, they brought her again before the throne of their mistress. Once more, Venus broke forth in laughter. "Behold," she says, "that swelling belly ought to obtain my sympathy. Will not its glorious fruit make me a happy grandmother? How nice for me to be called grandmother while still in the flower of my youth, and to hear this low slave's child called the grandson of Venus. But I am wrong in saying that he will be my grandson. The marriage is unequal. It was celebrated in a country place, without witnesses, without the father's consent. It cannot be considered valid. Your child, therefore, will be born a bastard, even if I let you live to bring forth a child at all." When she had ended, she rushed on Psyche, tore her clothes to shreds, pulled her hair, and struck her on the head with great violence. Then she had brought to her some grains of corn, of barley, of millet, of poppy seed, of chickpea, of lentils, and of beans. She mixed them all up together into one confused heap and said to Psyche, "You seem to me so ill-favored a slave that the only way for you to win a lover is to show great zeal in his service. I will test what good there is in you. These seeds that I have mixed together, separate them one by one, and arrange them in their different classes. Before night you must submit your completed task for my approval." Having pointed out the great heap of seeds, she went away to attend a wedding feast. Psyche made no effort to sort this confused and chaotic heap, but dismayed by the barbarity of the order, she stood in silent stupor. Then an ant, one of those little insects that live in the fields, appreciating the enormity of her task, took pity on the bride of the great god, and execrating the mother-in-law's cruelty, ran quickly and called together the whole of the neighboring tribe of ants. "Take pity," he cried, "O nimble children of the fruitful earth. Take pity on love's wife. Hasten to succor a beautiful maid from approaching danger." They came running up, these little 6-legged animals, tumbling one over another like the waves in the sea. Then they separated the grain, and arranging each in its class, they swiftly disappeared. As the night fell, Venus returned from the wedding feast, soaked with wine and smelling of balsam, with her body wound round with gleaming roses. When she saw the miraculous accomplishment of the task she had set, she cried, "This is none of your work, you deceitful wretch, but of his, to whom and to his and your ruin you appeared pleasing." Then throwing her a piece of black bread, she sought her couch. Meanwhile, Cupid was kept close prisoner in the innermost room of the palace, partly that his wound should not grow worse through his petulance and restlessness, partly that he should not meet his love. Thus, although separated, the two lovers passed a sad night under the same roof. Just as Aurora was driving across the sky, Venus called Psyche and said, "Do you see that wood through which a deep banked river flows? The furthermost trees of the wood looking on the source of the stream? There you will find sheep shining with golden fleeces and grazing without a shepherd. I command you at once to get from them the best you can, a flock of their precious wool, and bring it back to me." Psyche started off willingly, not, however, to fulfill her task, but from the rocky precipice by the riverside to find an end to her sufferings. But from the middle of the river a green reed, the cradle of many a tender harmony, inspired by the gods, comforted Psyche with these gentle words. "Psyche, although you have been racked with so many hardships, do not stain my holy waters by your unhallowed death, nor go near the fierce sheep who pasture on these banks, for when the sun pours down on them with its midday heat, they are wont to become mad with rage, and with their sharp horns, with their hard foreheads, and sometimes with their poisonous bites, they bring to mortals a cruel death, until midday is past and the sun's heat diminished, and the flock has been calmed by the coolness of the stream. You can hide yourself under the tall plane tree which drinks with me the waters of this river." As soon as the cool of the evening had tempered the raging of the flock, by pulling aside the leaves of the neighboring trees, you will find the golden wool that is adhered to the network of branches through which the sheep have forced their way. Thus did a simple reed show poor Psyche her way to safety. She did not fail to listen attentively to her instructions, but by observing them all, she easily accomplished the thefts of the flocks of yellow gold, and filling her lap, she carried them to Venus. But the issue of this second trial had not the desired success. Wrinkling her brows, and with sneering smile, her tyrant mistress said, "You cannot cheat me. I recognize the hand of your false helper. Now I will give you a test, which will prove whether you have such exceeding cleverness and prudence. Do you see the jagged rock that overhangs the summit of yonder mountain, from which a stream flows down in inky waves into the lap of a neighboring valley, nourishing the Stygian bogs and the hoarse waters of Cocytus? Seek the earliest source of that stream. Take with you this little flagon, and fill it full with its icy waters." Thus saying, with many threats, she placed in her hand a crystal flagon. Psyche eagerly hasted to the top of the mountain, thinking to find there an end to her misery in death. And as she neared the rock that had been pointed out to her, she realized the difficulties of her task and the certainty of her fate. The rock towered over her, jagged and inaccessible, spewing out from its ragged jaws the noisome stream, which, when it had escaped its confines, tumbled and flowed down the mountainside, then, tracing a narrow channel, was lost in the valley beneath. From either side of these rocky jaws, two raging dragons reared heads, rushed out, unsleeping sentinels, whose vigilance is never tired or cheated. Now even the waters, finding voice, began to warn her. "Go back," they cried. "What are you doing? Beware! Fly, or you will perish." The hopelessness of her task turned Psyche to a stone. Her body was there, but her mind had fled. Crushed under the weight of her sorrow, she was bereft even of the comfort of tears. The sorrows of this innocent soul were not, however, hidden from the all-seeing Providence. Suddenly, the royal bird of all-powerful Jupiter, the fierce eagle, spread wide his wings and flew down to her. He it was who, guided by Cupid, found and carried off the Phrygian youth to be Jove's cupbearer. He wished to repay the god of love by bringing help to the troubled bride, and for this reason he had left the ethereal realms and alighted before the maiden. "Ah, innocent! Unused to these tasks, do you hope to get even a drop from this fount, as terrible as it is sacred? Do you hope to be able even to reach it? Have you not heard that all the gods, even Jupiter himself, fear the Stygian waters, and that, as you, mortals, are wont to swear by the divinity of the gods swear by the majesty of the Styx? But give me your flagon." He took it from her hand, and soon returned with it, filled. For by rising on his spreading wings, he could fly between the dragons, whose opened jaws showed their terrible fangs and the darting of their triple tongues. When the flowing waters ordered him with threats to retire and leave them unharmed, he pretended he came by the orders of Venus and on her service. By this ruse, he obtained an easier access to their source. Having the flagon full of water, Psyche returned joyfully to Venus. But even this time she could not assuage the anger of the implacable goddess. Threatening her with still heavier and crueler tasks, Venus called to her, smiling spitefully. "You seem to be a witch deeply versed in the infernal arts, since you have so quickly obeyed such difficult commands. But here, my lass, you shall do me one more service. Take this box and carry it to the realms of the dead, right into the gloomy home of Orcus. There you shall present the box to Proserpine. Tell her that Venus asks her to send by you a little of her beauty, even if it is only sufficient for a day. For she has consumed all that she had in nursing her son, who is sick. Lose no time in returning, for I must use it before I take my place in the theater of the gods." Then Psyche felt she had reached the very crown of her sorrows, and casting on one side all elusive hopes, she saw that the goddess intended to drive her to destruction. Else why should she command her to go on foot to Tartarus and the Shades? Without delay, she made for the first high tower that she saw, from there intending to throw herself headlong. This she judged would be the easiest and most direct way to descend to Tartarus. But suddenly the tower found voice and spoke to her in the following words. "Why, poor wretch, do you seek your death by throwing yourself down from my summit? Why do you succumb without effort before this fresh task and danger? If you unyoke your soul from your body, you can indeed go to the very bottom of Tartarus, but then you can in no wise return. Listen to me. Lacedaemon, a noble city of Achaea, is not situated far from here. Seek near there the entrance to Taurus, hidden in an obscure corner. There is the vent hole of Pluto's dwelling, and through the yawning gap you will see a pathless way. As soon as you have passed through this gap and have entered on your journey, a straight road will bring you to the kingdom of Orcus. You will not, however, be able to walk right through these shades with empty hands. You must carry in either hand a cake of pearl barley mixed with honey, and in your mouth 2 pieces of money. When you have gone some way along the road of the dead, you will meet a lame donkey loaded with faggots, and with him a lame driver, who will ask you to hand him some cords as the load has slipped. But you must pass on without answering a word. Soon you will come to the river of the dead. There Charon holds his sway, demanding toll for all who wish to be ferried over to the opposite bank in his frail bark. For greed thrives among the dead. Charon, Pluto himself, though great even among the gods, gives nothing for nothing. And a poor man dying must seek money for his fare, for no one who has it not is allowed to breathe out his soul. Give this loathsome man a piece of money for his fare, but make him take it out of your mouth with his hand. Nor is this all. As you are passing over these stagnant waters, an old dead man floating in the stream will raise aloft his putrefying hands and beg you to draw him into the boat. But do not give way to a pity that is unlawful. When you have crossed the river and have gone a little distance on your way, some old woman spinning a web will ask you to lend them your aid for a little while. But it is not lawful for you even to stretch forth your hand. For these and many others are merely traps laid by malevolent Venus in order to get you to drop one of your cakes. Do not think the loss of one of these cakes would be a matter of small moment, for if one is lost, the light of day will, forever after, be refused you. Then you will see an immense dog, endowed with 3 huge heads and throats, a fierce and dreadful monster, who, thundering out deep barks from his throats, frights away the dead, whom, however, he cannot harm. He watches always before the threshold of Proserpine's somber halls and guards Pluto's silent dwelling. You will easily be able to get past him by throwing him one of your cakes. You will then be able to go direct to Proserpine, who will welcome you kindly and will invite you to recline on a soft couch and to partake of a sumptuous feast. Refuse this, and sitting on the ground, ask for a piece of black bread and eat it. Then tell the purpose of your coming, and taking what is given you, retrace your steps. Assuage the savage dog by throwing him your remaining cake. After that, you will pay the greedy ferryman with your second piece of money, and, having recrossed his river, you will follow the path you came by, and see once more the sky with its glittering band of stars. In all my advice, this one point is the most important. Do not wish to open the box you are carrying, or look upon the divine beauty deep hidden in its treasure house. Thus, the benevolent tower gave its advice. Psyche directed her steps without delay to Taenarus, and providing herself with the pieces of money and the cakes, she descended the path to the shades. She passed in silence the crippled donkey driver, and gave the ferryman the piece of money. She hardened her heart against the old man swimming in the stream, and turned a deaf ear to the crafty prayers of the spinners, and appeasing the dog's rage by the gift of a cake, she entered Proserpine's palace, refusing the offer of a soft couch and a dainty repast. She seated herself humbly at the feet of the goddess. Having appeased her hunger with black bread, she told the message of Venus. Without delay, she obtained the box, filled and closely fastened. With her second cake, she sealed the mouth of the snarling dog, and giving her remaining piece of money to the ferryman, she ran with all haste from the valley of the shades. When with thankful heart she once more reached the upper world, although in hot haste to end her task, a reckless curiosity filled her mind. "Behold," she said, "here am I stupidly bearing the source of the goddess, beauty, which, if I take but a little for myself, will render me gracious in the eyes of my beloved." With these words she opened the box. Lo, it contained no means of beauty, but a death-like and Stygian sleep, which, as soon as the lid was opened, rose and spread its lethargic vapors over every limb, and chained her to the very spot on which she stood. There she fell, bereft of all power and motion, a breathing statue. But Cupid had now quite recovered from his wound, and could no longer bear his Psyche's absence. He therefore escaped by the narrow window of the chamber in which he was imprisoned. On wings, strengthened by his long rest, he flew swiftly down to his Psyche. He recaptured the sleep and forced it back into its box. And then, with his arrow's harmless point, he awakened Psyche. Once more he said, "Poor child, you come to grief through the same curiosity. Lose no time now in fulfilling my mother's commands. After that, I will see to the rest." With these words, her lover took flight, and Psyche carried Proserpine's gift without delay to Venus. In the meanwhile, Cupid, outworn with love, and fearing that his mother's displeasure would send him forthwith to sobriety, took possession once more of his arms. On swiftness wing, he flew up to the topmost sky, and there, before Jupiter himself, he pleaded his cause. Jupiter took his face between his hands, and drawing it towards his mouth, kissed him, and then addressed him. "You know well, my son, you have never treated me with the respect that all the other gods have paid me. This intelligence, which has formed the great laws of nature, which guides the stars in their journeys, you have distorted by your repeated blows. On earth you have disgraced it by oft-repeated amours, breaking the laws especially promulgated against such intrigues. You have drawn me into adulterous adventures, which have compromised my honor and good name. You have compelled me to hide my majesty under the basest forms, a snake, a fire, a wild beast, a bird, a bull. I must not, however, forget the need of gentleness, or that you were brought up under my hand. I will consent to all your requests, but remember to be on guard against your rivals, and if there is on earth a maid of surpassing beauty, with her you must repay my bounty." When he had spoken thus, he ordered Mercury to convoke an assembly of the gods, and to proclaim that if any of the gods were absent from the roll call, he would be condemned to a fine of 10,000 crowns. By reason of this threat, the celestial amphitheater was quickly filled. Seated on his lofty throne, great Jupiter began. "Gods whose names are enrolled in the registers of the Muses, you know full well that this youth by my side was reared under my hand. His youthful prime, his boyish outbreaks, make me think it necessary to rein him in. Each day brings me tales of his lechery and riot. I feel that an end must be put to all this, and I have decided to enchain his intemperance with the bonds of matrimony. He has chosen a maid and has robbed her of her virginity. Her shall he hold, her shall he possess. In Psyche's embraces shall he forever find content. Then, turning to Venus, he said, And you, my beloved daughter, do not grieve nor fear by reason of a marriage with a mortal, that the honor of your great house and name will be dimmed. This marriage shall neither be disproportionate nor irregular. He then ordered Mercury to find Psyche and carry her up to the heavens. When this had been done, he took a cup of ambrosia and said, Drink, Psyche, and be immortal. Never more shall Cupid leave your side, for your marriage shall last throughout eternity. Immediately, a magnificent marriage feast was served. On the seat of honor sat Cupid with Psyche in his arms. With them sat Jupiter and Juno. Then the gods in their order. Nectar, which is the wine of the gods, was handed around. His own cupbearer, the young shepherd, served Jupiter. The rest of the gods were waited on by Bacchus, while Vulcan cooked the viands. The Hours crowned the guests with roses. The Graces sprayed them with balsam. The Muses sang with dulcet voice. Apollo sang to his lyre. Venus, to the strains of the sweetest music, danced with heavenly grace. It was so arranged that the Muses formed the choir, while a satyr played his flute and a pupil of Pan attuned his pipe. Thus, with all due rites, was Psyche joined to Cupid, and in due course the child was born, whom men call Desire. Here ends the tale of Cupid and Psyche.